Now recording. So again, welcome everyone to our second installation of UEB and Nemeth, just the facts. Today we're going to be talking, we're going to actually pick up where we left off on the last webinar from January 13th, last Wednesday, because we obviously did not finish with UEB and math. So we're going to pick up there, and then we're going to move on to using Nemeth within UEB context. And so hopefully we can get through a good portion of that today, but we shall see. And again, we have one more webinar where we can wrap that up and then also talk about the decision-making process for determining whether you should teach Nemeth within UEB context to your student or whether you should teach UEB. You're going to be teaching UEB anyway, but whether you're going to use that for math or not. So the opening code for today is math, M-A-T-H, math, again. Practice rules, we're going to give you guys just 2 minutes today so we can try to get through a lot of the content. And then you can go back and complete the work on your own time and submit that for your in-service credit. The exercises are going to be continuing on exercise 3 from our last webinar that was on January 13th. Today we're going to do an overview of the UEB math symbols, in particular fractions and superscripts and subscripts, and some additional symbols such as radicals and shape indicators. Then we're going to talk about some facts about UEB and Nemeth and give you a little bit of history of why we have the two codes. And we're going to also go over some examples and exercises of UEB with Nemeth, and of course go over resources that we used to create these webinars, that Kathy used to create these webinars. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to our UEB guru, Kathy.
All right. Well, I know some of you were asking questions last time and were wanting to know where these things were located in the rule book and things like that. So this first part is to answer some of those questions. You've got the section guidelines. As much as possible, I tried to keep the formatting of, if it's in rounded parentheses, it's talking about the UEB rule book, and if it's in square brackets, it's talking about the guidelines for technical material. So here you've got the references of where the signs of operation, comparison, and omission are. You've got the spatial layout. And I know, I think it was Teresa last time was asking about how to do carryovers and cancellation within spatial problems for like addition, multiplication, things like that. So I added that in here of where that's located in the technical manual. And then the numeric space symbol where that is, and line continuation indicators and stuff. So the burning questions too. We did see them, but we're going to be addressing a lot of that in the next webinar when we go to talk about the decisions and how to tell which one we should do and that kind of thing. So we are not ignoring your questions, but they all will fit better into the last webinar. All right, so on to simple fractions and mixed numbers. With UEB, anytime you have just numbers or numbers with decimal points or commas, or the line continuation indicator, you're going to have a simple fraction, okay? So, and it has to be where one number is over the other, like the 1/2, the 1 is directly over the 2 in the first example, or the 3 1/2, where the 1 is over the 2, but it's kind of on a diagonal. That's when you're going to use a simple fraction line. So you just put on the number sign, 1, simple fraction line 2. You do not need to repeat the numeric indicator because simple fraction line does not cancel numeric mode. And pretty much anything that doesn't cancel numeric mode can be in these simple fractions. So you can see we've got, for mixed numbers, how they do it. They put a numeric indicator, the 3 for the whole number, then another numeric indicator, and then the 1/2. And that's how they do mixed numbers. And then we've got an example of the 3.5 over 5.5. Again, simple fraction line doesn't cancel numeric mode, neither does the decimal point, so you don't need to put another numeric indicator. Now forward slash you're going to use whenever you have two numbers side by side written on the same line horizontally. So if you look at that 1/4 mile walk, the 1 and the 4 are both touching the same line. One's not over the other, and so you've got that slash. That's when you use the forward slash. And forward slash does cancel numeric mode. So that's why you have number 1 slash and then have to have the number sign again and 4 mile walk. Then for like the serial number, capital NO period, and then you've got number 55324 slash, which cancels numeric mode. So then when you have that 8, you have to do numerics, the numeric indicator and an 8 again. All right. So any questions about simple fractions and mixed numbers and the forward slash? Okay, I don't see any questions, so why don't we move on? And you get time to practice it.
Okay, so your 2 minutes is going to start now. All right.
Helps to turn the mic back on. The answers are pretty straightforward. About the only thing I would call your attention to is remember on the very last one, you've got the 1/2 plus. The plus sign cancels numeric mode, so you have to have another numeric indicator to do the 2 and 1/2. And then equals, and remember, because this lower symbol for the question mark could be mistaken as his, you need the grade 1 indicator. Yeah, the grade 1 indicator. All right. And as Andrea said, if you didn't get a chance to finish, no problem. You've got this. You can go back to it, and you've got the answers to check yourself. Okay? All right, so moving on. General fractions are any time there's anything in the numerator or denominator other than numbers, decimal points, commas, and or spaces. So if you add a letter, a $sign, anything like that, then you've got a general fraction instead of a simple fraction. So if you have a general fraction, you open it with the dots 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, or the symbol for of, and general fraction closing indicator is dots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or the symbol for with. And because those can be mistaken for other contractions, we're going to be using the grade 1 indicator. And then the general fraction line is the 4, 6 with the same division type sign. All right, so in our examples, the first one is x over y. All right, so notice that there's 2 grade 1 indicators. That way, you don't have to keep putting a bunch of indicators in between them. And I tried to put as many examples of this. I'm still kind of figuring out the rhyme and reason of when you use a single one or both, the grade 1 symbol indicator versus the grade 1 word indicator versus the grade 1 passage indicator. So you've got the open general fraction, X, general fraction line, Y, closed general fraction. And because of those grade 1 indicators, you know all of that stuff in there is not contractions. And then we look at our other one, 1 plus y over 24. So number sign 1, the plus sign, open general fraction y, general fraction line, and then look, because that cancels numeric mode, you're not in numeric mode. You put a numeric indicator for the 24, and then close general fraction. All right. Okay, and then now this one I've added in because I wanted to show on page 7 in section 1.7.7 in the guidelines for technical materials, it had all of these listed. And so if you look, we've got speed equals distance over time. Okay, there's 3 different ways that you can write that. The first one, because if we remember, a passage is 3 or more symbol sequences. Well, speed is 1, the equals is 2, distance over time is 3. So we can use the grade 1 passage indicator, the 3, 5, 6s that Andrea's helpfully has underlined, to set the uncontracted mode. And so then everything has to be spelled out. So you got speed, the space that equals, and then open general fraction, distance over time, closed general fraction. And then whenever you start the grade 1 indicator, you have to close it. And I don't know why that doesn't have it in braille. But it should be the 5, 6 followed by the dot 3, which is always our terminator. But you could also write this, because we like to use the contractions, write speed contracted equals, and then do the grade 1 word indicator, because a word is simply a string of letters or symbols or both. And so the whole thing after it is considered a word. You've got open general fraction, and then you have to write out distance over time, closed fraction. Now, because we like to save space, we would probably choose to do it the last way, which is contracted speed, the equal sign, and then only the grade 1 symbol indicator, so that that first open general fraction is read as open general fraction and not as of, and then you can contract distance over, you can contract time, and then so that last part isn't read as with, you have the grade 1 symbol indicator again. So different ways to do it. And it said on that page 7, minimizing the number of indicators has to be balanced against reducing clutter within the expression itself. A grade 1 mode symbol indicator, which occurs halfway through an expression, may be more disruptive to the reader than the word or passage indicator, even if these take up more cells. It's also important to use a consistent approach when transcribing a particular text. Overall, the focus should be on mathematical clarity for the reader. So there is some flexibility given here, but it sounds like from what I could tell, they lean more towards using the grade 1 word indicator or the grade 1 passage indicator. And I see a question.
So Mary Klein asked, so you can use contractions with that fraction line?
Yes, from what I can understand, yes.
And Andrea Hardy asked, if there was a number in this fraction, could you still do it all 3 ways?
I believe so, yes. And that's why later on we're going to get to an example that confused me because I was trying to figure out why it was done one way and not with another with the numeric indicator. So I believe so, yes. But again, I'm not the expert on this either, so I'm still figuring out and learning. Okay.
Andrea Hardy's typing, so let's see. I mean a number with words in the fraction.
Number with, yes, yeah. And that was one of the things with UEB is you can put numbers in the middle of words. You can have all of them mixed up like that. Okay, good question. Okay, so superscripts and subscripts. The subscript sign is the EN sign, so dots 2,6. The superscript sign is the IN sign, dots 3,5.
I like those because like the subscript. It looks like it's going down, and the superscript looks like it's going up.
And that's a good way to remember it too. So obviously, to prevent these from being confused, we're going to be using grade 1 grade 1 indicators. So if we look at vitamin B6, you've got the capital B, and then so that's not read as EN. You have to have the grade 1 symbol indicator. You got that, and then you've got your subscript sign and the number sign 6. Then, born in 1809, this one I actually corrected because when I used it in Pinellas, I had a grade 1 symbol indicator before that superscript A, which you don't really need because grade 1 numeric indicator starts grade 1 mode also. So that's why here you don't need it, just the superscript sign A. And you don't have to worry about the A being confused with a number because the superscript sign's in between them. All right, then we got 9 yards squared. You've got the YD, the grade 1 symbol indicator, superscript, and then number 2. And water is H2O. Capital H, grade 1 word symbol indicator, number sign 2, and then capital O, just like it's in print. I see someone typing.
Go back.
Oh, others are typing.
So like I'm wondering if they're thinking the same thing. So like with the Nemeth, you have to you have the indicator to bring it back up or down to the line.
In UEB, it only applies to the very next thing. So it only applies to whatever is directly next to it. So you don't have to worry about like going back to baseline. There is ways though, let's say it was vitamin B624. There's ways of adding more to that with grouping symbols, but to learn about that, I suggest go to the Guidelines for Technical Material, section 7.
Okay, so Andrea Hardy asked, but if 1809A was 1809B, would you still need a grade letter indicator?
No, I don't think you would, because as long as you have that superscript in between the numbers and the letter, it can't get confused. The A or the B would only be confused with a number if they were right next to each other. And it can't be confused with but because it's not standing alone, if you were thinking that direction too, as far as the A versus the B.
And Becky's asking, can you check the definitions for superscript and subscript? I think they are backwards.
Subscript, text written. You are right. Thank you. I've had other look at this and I missed that too. Yes. Thank you for catching it. It is backwards. Subscript is when it's written below the line. Superscript is when it is written above the line. Thank you for being on the ball and catching these. We try and proofread the best we can, but sometimes it all just blends together. So you are doing great on the ball catching that. Okay. Another example, and this is where I kind of want to get into that there's more than one way to do it. So one of the examples I ran across was consider the following equation, and then colon 3x minus 4y plus y squared equals x squared. Okay. The consider the following equation is just in UEB. And then there was 2 different ways shown that it could be written. You could use the grade 1 passage indicator, so the 3, 5, 6s, and then put the rest of the thing, the rest of that passage, and make sure you put the passage terminator at the end. Or because that numeric indicator starts grade 1 mode also, and grade 1 mode is only canceled by a space, a hyphen, or a dash, which we don't have in this first part. You wouldn't need it anymore. So that's why you wouldn't need it for this whole first one. You'd have the equals, but you would need to put it in the at the end for the x squared. You need the grade 1 symbol indicator because that could get mistaken. Any questions on that? The equation can be written, let's see, I wrote down some of the information it talked about. The equation can be written two ways because the left-hand side of the equation is in grade 1 mode following the numeric indicator, and that's from the guidelines for technical material on section 1.7.3, page 6. It also notes that on this page that more complex algebraic equations are best enclosed in grade 1 passage indicators. This will ensure that isolated letters and indicators such as superscripts, subscripts, fractions, radicals, arrows, and shapes are well defined without the need for the grade 1 symbol indicators. In the guideline technical material in section 1.7.4, page 6, if a complex algebraic equation doesn't include a comparison sign, such as an equal sign, then it is unlikely to include interior spaces in Braille, and so the grade 1 word indicator will be enough to ensure all of the same things are defined that we just talked about with the passage indicator. And so it seems, from what I'm understanding, it leans towards use the grade 1 passage or use the grade 1 word indicator most of the time. Okay, next. All right, so here's another example using the grade 1 passage indicator. Solve the following quadratic equations. And this one gets a little bit more advanced, but I just wanted you to see this because it was kind of eye-opening for me. So they have this red cell, and this went with in the technical guidelines, section 1.7.5. When entire work examples or sets of exercises are enclosed in grade 1 passage indicators, the grade 1 indicators can proceed by the use indicator. That's what that .5.5 followed by the full Braille cell. That's a use indicator, and placed on their own line. So you can open up a whole section of problems and not have to keep putting them on every line. And then whenever you get to the end of your problems, you'd put that use indicator again and then put the terminator on it. So just to give you an idea that that's something that's possible and that's out there. Any questions about the about any of this before you do your exercises? Okay.
All right, go ahead. You got 2 minutes to practice. I see Carol's typing, but you guys can go ahead and continue, and we'll see if we can answer Carol's question.
And on this first one, I was going to give you a hint. Well, and I added more slides to try and clarify it, but the first two need grade 1 symbol indicators, and the third needs a grade 1 word, and the last one needs a grade 1 passage indicator from the answers that I had. All right, so how do you do something like 4 squared? You repeat the number indicator after the superscript indicator, not to be confused with the 4 super B.
So you would do the superscript sign and then number sign.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, you do number sign 4, the grade 1 word, no, with number sign you wouldn't need it. Number sign 4, the superscript, number sign 2. Because the superscript cancels numeric mode. It doesn't cancel grade 1 mode, but it cancels numeric mode. So I believe that's correct. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I noticed in the technical guidelines there's some examples, but there's not a whole ton of examples, and it doesn't cover every situation. Um,
Okay, time is up. We'll move on
all
to
right,
the
so
answers.
looking at that, the first one, you have the initial, on the first one, the grade 1 symbol indicator, because right after that you've got a number sign 2, and that takes care of the rest of the, sets grade 1 mode for the rest of the symbol sequence. And the next one, same kind of situation. You've got the grade 1 symbol indicator to handle that first symbol, but then you've got the number sign 5, and that takes care of the rest of the equation as far as grade 1 mode. Then the next one, you don't have that number right away, and then there's other things mixed in, so they use the grade 1 word indicator. And on the last one, because we have 3 symbol sequences, we've got the grade 1 passage indicator, and that has to be closed at the end whenever you're done with the grade 1 terminator. Okay, so radical indicators. The SH sign is the open radical, and the ING sign is the closing radical. So for like our 100, we use the grade 1 symbol indicator so it doesn't get confused with SH. So open square root, number sign 100, close square root with the ING sign. For the next one, you have the grade 1 word indicator to cover everything throughout. And then we have open square root, m plus n, close square root. The next one, throwing in a superscript, we've got the grade 1 word indicator, open square root, b, then we have the superscript, number sign 2, then the plus sign, and then number sign 4, close square root. And the last one, y equals square root of x over y. We've got the grade 1 passage indicator because there's 3 or more symbol sequences. Y equals open square root, open general fraction, x over number 2, close general fraction, and then close square root and terminate the grade 1 mode passage. So, and ask any questions if you've got it, and if not, we've got...
Your time starts now. Your time.
You can do that. Yeah.
All right.
Slide. All right, and I see Nancy typing, so we'll see. I purposely made these examples almost exactly like, these exercises almost exactly like the examples, so it'd be easier. Where there'll be a lesson book to cover the math. Nancy, from what I've heard, they are developing an advanced UEB course that's supposed to cover a lot of this technical material and stuff like that. That NLS with NFB, I believe, is developing that. When it will be ready and coming out, I have no idea. But yeah, I'm with you. I hope that they do come out with more materials to help learn how to do the more advanced stuff. Either that or put a lot more examples and beef up the technical guidelines. Okay, so the only thing I really wanted to kind of look at on this one was that one in red, the 5 square root of A. This was an example I took from the workshop with Dr. DeAndrea and Dr. Holbrook, and that's how they had it written as correct, with the 2 grade 1 word indicators, then number sign 5, square root A, closed square root. Now, to me, I don't think you would need those because with that number sign in front, you're setting grade 1 mode. So that one kind of confused me and I wasn't sure, but it might go back to it's preferable to have just that, the grade 1 word. But that's where I'm not real sure either. So we're doing the best we can with the knowledge we have.
Everybody's learning together.
Dr. DeAndrea said they still feel like they're learning and they've been like completely focused on this for like 3 years.
So don't beat yourself up too bad. It's a big learning
curve. There's a lot
curve.
more flexibility with UEB than there is in like Nemeth. Which can be good and bad depending on the situation. Okay, next we've got shape indicators, and I gave you where they're referenced. The shape indicators may need to be preceded by the grade 1 word indicator or symbol indicator unless they're already in numeric mode. If a shape is followed by a space, no termination sign is needed, but if there's if the shape symbol is followed by punctuation or other symbols, you do need the termination sign. And this is one of only 2 UEB termination signs that does not have a .3. So you've got the shape indicator, which is the ED sign, the shape terminator, which is the WH sign. And then, so like a triangle, shape indicator, number sign 3. There's 3 sides on an equilateral, on a triangle. And it's an equilateral triangle. Shape sign number 4, square. There's 4 sides on a square. For circle, shape sign, full braille cell. And if you go to this section in either the rule book or the guidelines, you'll see all the other shapes and other indicators and other things. We couldn't cover everything. I just wanted to give you an idea. So if we look at the example, you follow the print. In the first one, we've got triangle with a space, ABC. So we've got grade 1 symbol indicator, the ED sign for shape sign number 3, so triangle, space, capital word indicator, ABC. Then in the other example, though, triangle, ABC all run together. In this instance, you still start with the grade 1 symbol indicator. You've got the number sign 3, but then you do need that terminator before you go into the capital signs and ABC. Okay. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Then there's parallel and perpendicular. Notice that they both have the same prefix, the numeric indicator, and it's just the root that changed. So examples, line AB is perpendicular to CD. Notice you need the grade 1 indicator, symbol indicator with AB, so it's not read as about. And same thing with CD, so it's not read as could. Remember that with your short forms and letters and stuff. And that's the big thing with UEB. You use the grade 1 indicator whenever something could be confused for something else. Then the line segment, XY, is parallel to line segment RS in that example. XY can't get confused, you don't need it. The parallel symbol can't get confused with anything else, so you don't need a grade 1 word grade 1 indicator. And same thing with the perpendicular sign. Okay, then there's ditto marks. So here shows an example of how you could use them. and it's dots 5, 2. So, and then we have the tally mark, which is 4, 5, 6, and then you have the 4 tally marks with a strike through is 4 of the 4, 5, 6s followed by 2, 5. But I think you have flexibility because I think I saw it in the technical guidelines that you could do it either way. You could put 5 of these in a row, or you can use that strike through symbol as well. Okay, Carol, thanks. Yeah, you can do it either way. And one thing to be careful with those is pay careful attention to the context and the actual symbols to differentiate the ditto marks from prime signs for inches from open quotations. Sometimes that's a subtle difference, but they're all distinct. They're supposed to be all distinct symbols in print and therefore all distinct symbols in Braille. All right, so time to practice.
I think your time starts. I think your time starts now. Okay, time's up. We'll move on to the answers.
And with these are pretty straightforward, but the biggest thing is making sure that you noticed the triangle EFG and triangle XYZ were right next to it, so you needed to use the termination, shape terminator. Yep. And other than that, these are pretty straightforward of just putting in the symbols, so unless you have any questions, we can move on.
Look at that. So we caught up from last week's webinar, and now we're going to dive into UEB with Nemeth.
So we're going to start. All right. So just again, as far as kind of filling in the background, okay, the National Federation for the Blind and the American Council for the Blind were the ones to put forth the motion in summer of 2012 to accept UEB with the provision that Nemeth be kept as an official code in the U.S. And it was their proposal that ended up becoming the one that led to us adopting UEB in the U.S. And then I mentioned that just as background of how we got to here. I'm not saying one's better than the other or which one we should use. We'll delve into all those kind of questions in the next webinar. But one quote that was, I thought, really cool that I believe it was Dr. DeAndrea said, and she said, UEB at the moment is kind of like Mac in a Windows world. Well, UEB is in the Nemeth world. You know, they both are equal. They both do the same things. Macs and Windows can do the same things. It's just a lot of preference. And some people are strong that one's better than the other, either way. So just to kind of throw that out there, our purpose is just to kind of let you know where it came from. The Nemeth Code is not changing, just the words surrounding the Nemeth material will be changing to UEB from EBAE. And then BANA did create a Nemeth UEB task force when this started going through to try and handle all these issues that come up and put out the provisional guidelines and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there is the provisional guidance for transcription using the Nemeth Code within UEB contexts that was approved in November 2014. It's available at that website.
We also have it here in the file box for download, in case you want to go ahead and download it now, or you can use that link within the PDF or PowerPoint.
Thanks. A lot of the material in here is taken directly from this provisional guidance. Okay, and on the BANA website there was like some explanation and stuff with where it was posted that kind of opens up when you click on it, and it was talking about the fact that it provides information on how to switch between UEB and Nemeth, and it's similar to the process that we used to do when switching between EBAE and computer braille code. And again, as we said, this is necessary due to the surrounding technical material changing from EBAE to UEB, and the need for increased translation from print to braille and from braille to print. Okay, so one thing I did want to definitely point out, especially in particular for those transcribers out there, BANA encourages feedback, and they put it on, that's from the Braille website. This is BANA's website directly. It said testing is ongoing to determine whether additional items should be addressed in this guidance, and they welcome feedback about what else needs to be added using the methods and stuff. If you've got opinions, express them. On the bottom of BANA's webpage, there's a area, I believe, where you can just type in comments. If you are a Nemeth transcriber and use this stuff a lot, give them feedback, because they need to know if there's issues you're running across. They need to know all that kind of stuff, and who better to tell them than somebody that's uses Nemeth on a regular basis. So we've got the Nemeth switch symbols that were added to the UEB rulebook in 2013. The opening Nemeth indicator is 456 and the SH sign, and you'll put a blank space after it. The Nemeth terminator is 456 and the WH sign. And there's a blank space before it. And then notice, I found it interesting that the terminator for the Nemeth is also the same terminator for shape symbol. So they do try and keep things consistent as much as possible. All right, so basic guidance on when to switch. Any math or chemical formula should be done in Nemeth, and that includes fragmentary expressions, isolated signs of operation or comparison when mentioned in reference to those formulas, and fractions. Fractions should be done in Nemeth. All other text, including punctuation associated with the surrounding sentences, should be done in UEB. Okay, exceptions to this, though, because it wouldn't be Nemeth without exceptions. It is preferred not to overdo the switching just for the sake of simple items that could easily be read in either code. All right, so if it's just a few letters or something. So mention of numbers, letter variables within an otherwise UEB context would be done in UEB. This can include Arabic numbers, Roman numerals, numbers with commas, and decimal points. If in Nemeth mode, you're going to transcribe commas, semicolons, parentheses, brackets, or braces with Nemeth symbols. Again, you don't want to start switching back and forth just for a punctuation symbol or something like that. Okay, then there's also the one-word switch indicator. So, and I wanted to highlight it, so I put it in colors. I don't know if this symbol truly is a root and prefix kind of situation, but in the examples, it's a lot easier to pull your eye to where it is if it's colored. So it's going to precede the word, and there won't be any space between it and the word, and it's used to avoid switch indicators when there's only a single word that occurs between two math expressions, and you'll see in a minute an example of that. It's used in Nemeth mode to indicate that that the following word is in UEB, and therefore contractions may be used within that word. There was also a note in the guidance that it should precede the word whether contracted or not, and otherwise no contraction should be used when in Nemeth mode. Like the capital indicators, this indicator is disregarded in reference to the UEB lower sign rules. And that's where, like, usually if you have a lower sign and it's touching something with punctuation or something like that, if it's all lower cells in UEB, you can't use it. But if it was like the contracted word BE, you can do just the capital sign BE and have that. And so same with this kind of symbol. A note that this symbol is experimental and has not yet been put forward by the BANA Math Technical Committee. I found that interesting and wanted to say that that's in the provisional guidelines. It says that. So they're still working on figuring out and finalizing and taking care of this. So don't be surprised if some changes come up at some point. And that's where, again, your feedback is important. All right, so and one thing I wanted to mention about the provisional guidance too that confused me at first, and then I got it. They have I think 3 or 4 examples in the very beginning, and they tell you those are taken directly from the UEB rule book, and then they show those same examples again, but this time with the things that they're suggesting from the provisional guidance. So that's why you see it twice in 2 different ways. One, they did it exactly how it shows in the rule book, and then the other with how they're suggesting it. So these examples are how they're suggesting you use the provisional guidance and the changes. All right, so we've got the results will be in the form parentheses AX plus BY, close parentheses, CX plus DY, comma, where, that's your single word, and AC equals 12, comma, BD equals -10, comma, and your other single word, AD plus BC equals 7, period. Okay, so notice we've got our opening Nemeth symbol before that first set of AX plus BY, etc. And then notice the comma is a Nemeth comma because you're in Nemeth mode at that point. And then you've got the single word switch indicator for the where, and you've got AC equals 12, the Nemeth comma, BD equals -10, the Nemeth comma, and another single word switch with the and then you've got the rest of it, and then you close the Nemeth out after that and put the period, because you're not going on. Now, if you were to be continuing on in Nemeth Code after that, if there was another set of equations or if there was exercises after this, then you do a Nemeth period. But in this case, we're ending there. There's no more Nemeth, and so that's why we closed off the Nemeth.
So you do the punctuation.
So you do the punctuation indicator.
Yeah, and we'll see an example of that
period.
later on.
Okay.
This example and the next 2 are from the UEB code book modified as per the guidelines proposed. And it's included in the guidance for transcription using the UEB context. Let's see. Including in the changes keeping the opening and closing Nemeth indicators on the line with the equation if the entire equation and indicators will fit on the line, and not leaving Nemeth code for the word and where. Okay, so here's another example. He said, comma, open quote, 4x plus 3y is the numerator. And I'm not sure why, but that, I believe, there should be, that open quote should be right next to that opening Nemeth indicator. I'm not sure why there's a space there. But I'm pretty sure, and actually I've got the guidance piece right here. Yes, there should be no space between that open quote and the open Nemeth symbol. Yep. So then we have the 4x plus 3, and then there should be, though, a space in between the 3y and the closing. Because essentially you're always going to have a space between the Nemeth material and the opening sign, and you're always going to have a space between the Nemeth material and the closing sign. I'm sorry about that slide. I don't know why that ended up happening, but at least I'm letting you know while we're talking about it. Any questions or anything so far?
How many of you
How many of you have been transcribing UEB within Nemeth context already?
And thanks, Meg,
Anybody?
for letting us know there should be a space.
Mary,
Yeah, Carol has been.
Carol, Yayla. All right. Anybody else? Okay, so at least 3 of you.
All right. So with this one, we've got solution. Notice that we've got the italicized, italicized word symbol, and then solution. And then we've got, again, we group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. Notice with this one, put the opening Nemeth indicator on the previous line. And so then we can start the Nemeth code after that. And the whole thing stays in Nemeth until the very end. And we don't have to close it until the end. And it's preferred, one of the things I had written down, the opening indicator is placed on the end of the text line preceding the beginning of the math expression in preference to being on a line by itself. So if you can fit it, that's the preference. Okay, so now time to practice. This example was taken from McDougall-Littell Algebra 1, Chapter 10 resource book, lesson 10.5, page 72, which I just happen to have at home. And I did the best I could with this, so remember, we're all learning together. Vocabulary and factor are both bold. And in the actual book, it was spaced like this with that, and then on the next line, and indented the P plus Q equals B and the PQ equals C, period. That's the way it was shown in print. So I followed what was in print. This page, shouldn't the equation start in cell 3 with runovers? Meg, probably. This is where I am not an expert in formats whatsoever. I was trying to do my best with that, and I'm a self-taught Nemeth person. I never had Nemeth Code. I opened the book and learned by the examples, and so I missed a lot of the formatting stuff. And so I was a little hesitant because I knew that there probably would be some formatting issues that I would miss, and you all know much better than I do. So, yes, I'm sure you are right on that. Kind of a difficult balance. I was trying not to just like grab examples from other people and other trainings, but yet wanting to make sure that the examples were as correct as possible.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on.
So since we have our Nemeth, we have our transcribers, and one definitely certified in Nemeth, maybe more, but I know, Meg, you definitely are. Why don't you let me know any formatting that I did wrong so everybody can know the formatting and how to correct the formatting. I did the best I could, like I said, but I wasn't sure on that. And the other thing that was difficult is the slides are only so wide. They're not as wide as a Braille page. And so that was giving me some issues too, even with the examples. The spacing ended up a different issue with some of them. So we've got the bold indicator for the vocabulary and for factor. Then we've got our words and everything like that. Then we go into, notice that you want to keep, if at all possible, keep the opening and closing Nemeth indicators on the same line with the expression, if it'll fit and if you can do that. And notice there's the comma after it. And then we open it before we go to the next line with the P and the Q. And we have the single word switch with the and. And here at the end of that line, there's that period on C, but the following line has an equation, so we stay in Nemeth mode, so that's why there's the punctuation indicator with the period. And that I was able to see another example in someone else's, in Dorothy Worthington's material, that I know she knows what she's doing with this. A similar example to help me guide me on that. I see Meg is typing. Assuming the second line is also displayed, it should start in cell 3 with runovers in cell 5. Okay, thank you. Yes. I appreciate you pointing out the formatting.
Oops, sorry. Anybody have any questions on these exercise 7 answers? We'll move on.
All right, so additional guidelines. The title page, any supplemental title pages of the book, and labels for figures, such as figure 1, should all be transcribed in UEB. It was suggested for transcribers to look through the entire document or book to make decisions about how the switches will be handled, so there's consistency throughout. And this was especially regarding special symbols such as %, degree mark, and Greek letters and stuff like that. When consistency of representation is necessary, is especially beneficial to the reader, it suggested switching to Nemeth Code for some of these symbols, the %, the degree mark, and that kind of thing, with the attached numbers. In general, it talked about keeping the switch indicators on the same line as the math they apply to, but in a numbered or lettered series of math problems that are in Nemeth Code, leave Nemeth mode in effect for the identifiers to avoid excessive switching, even though these identifiers are not technically part of the math. So like your question number 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C, those. They're not technically part of the math, but that way you're not switching in and out and in and out. In this type of situation, the opening Nemeth Code indicator should be placed by itself on the line above the item to ensure that all the identifiers begin in the same cell and they're all lined up. And you can also put it on the previous line with the end of the directions. Nemeth Code terminator should go on the same line with the text that, where Nemeth mode ends, if at all possible. On the left side or the right side. Immediately following wherever the material ends, I believe, Mary. Okay. All right, so here's another example. We've got a line of problems. So you've got the A is 2/5 plus 5/2 equals blank. B 12/5 minus 9/5 equals blank. C 14/5 minus 8/9 equals blank. And D 2/15 plus 24/15 equals blank. So we've got the opening Nemeth Code symbol on the line, and then A, B, C, and D are all lined up, done in Nemeth with Nemeth format coding. And then you've got all your fractions, equals, and then you've got the omission symbols. And at the very end on that line with D, you've got the closing Nemeth indicator, or Nemeth terminator, I guess we should say. And this example is from the guidance for transcription using Nemeth and UEB context also. Okay, so if exercise directions end with an expression in Nemeth Code, and the subsequent math problems start with Nemeth Code, the Nemeth Code may be left in effect between the end of the directions and the start of the problems. When short comments and words appear alternated with math problems, such as comments on equations, you're going to switch out of Nemeth Code to transcribe the comments in contracted Braille. And it did talk about in tactile graphics. If a tactile graphic is between two items in Nemeth Code, you're going to leave Nemeth mode in effect for the graphics, and if applicable, then put a note on the transcriber's note page that the Nemeth Code is used in tactile graphics. I see someone typing. Andrea. Okay. I'll keep going and then we'll see when Andrea's question pops up. With spatial problems, if space, okay, we have, what about if there's explanations, step 1, step 2, and different parts of the problem are written out, and different parts of the problem is written out? I'm not sure. Let us get to the example and see if that might answer your question. And if not, maybe we can brainstorm together and figure it out. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so with spatial problems, if space permits, the opening Nemeth Code indicator is placed on the same line with the end of the text above the problem. And then the required blank line follows this indicator. If there's not room, the opening Nemeth indicator is placed at the margin on a line by itself, followed by the blank line needed before spatial problems. When Nemeth mode is closed, the terminator is placed at the margin on a line by itself and is preceded by the required blank line. If code switching within a math problem would interfere with the alignment of the problem, the opening Nemeth indicator can go at the end of the line before the math. And if there is not room, it's treated as a run over to that line. I see Meg typing. In the passage labeled Facts About Nemeth, it says that no contractions are used in Nemeth Code. That is true if talking about all things. True if talking about all things done in Nemeth. Okay, I think that's more a statement. Thanks, Meg. Yeah.
I'm confused by that.
I'm confused by that.
Because
It's
have to
untrue.
Because we have to indicate if we're using.
we have to indicate
Con-
word.
we have to indicate when there's a contracted word.
When you're in
Even if
Nemeth
it is-
mode, you'd only have one word that would be contracted in there. Otherwise, Nemeth mode, you wouldn't have words in there.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right. Okay, I see what
Wait,
you're saying. Sorry.
I think Meg's
Okay,
clarifying
got it.
more too.
Thanks, Meg.
To be honest, some of this stuff I was a little unsure of too. Okay, it depends on what is before and after it. All right. Thank you, Meg, for jumping in and helping us with this. We greatly appreciate it. Okay, okay. A switch from the Nemeth to UEB or from UEB to Nemeth terminates the effect of type form and capitalization indicators without the need for explicit terminators. Okay. So if code switching is necessary within a text of an emphasized passage, such as a labeled statement, the beginning emphasis indicators are repeated after each switch to show the emphasis continues. And so it made a point of saying, avoid excessive use of indicators by omitting emphasis unless doing so would change meaning. So it kind of made it seem like, if at all possible, don't do the bold, underline, and all that kind of stuff unless it would change the meaning or cause the person not to be able to solve the problem or something. It did say use UEB emphasis indicators in surrounding text and Nemeth emphasis indicators if you're in Nemeth mode, which makes sense. Use whichever code you're using in that. And this is the majority of the information in the provisional guidance for transcription using the Nemeth Code within UEB contexts that was approved November 2014. There is a section in that guideline, in that pack, 9 pages, that talks about formatting that you can refer to. I didn't think we were going to have time to cover it, and quite frankly, I'm not an expert on formatting, so I didn't really feel competent in covering it. But for those of you that need that formatting, stuff like that, you can refer to the packet in there. And if you ever have any questions, email Banna.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and some of it, like going through it, I put some question marks because I didn't quite understand what it was talking about with some of the formatting and stuff. But that, again, is probably just my limitation. I come from the vision teacher world where the formatting isn't always stressed as much. All right, so trying to give a practical example to kind of wrap our minds around this kind of thing. So we've got, you can substitute these values into the equation to find C, and you've got ax plus by equals C, and then you've got that comment, standard form of a linear equation. And then 4x plus 5y equals C, and then the comment, substitute values for A and B. Now, formatting-wise, I tried to keep this as close to what was there as I could. I believe, yeah, this is actually an example in the provisional guidelines. But I was having some trouble because of the size of the slide and where things fit. So it looks different than what you would see in the provisional guidance, slightly. And I tried to do the formatting following what they had as close as I could. All right, so we've got, after you've got the capital C, notice we go into Nemeth mode. So then you're in Nemeth mode for capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C. Close Nemeth mode, and then you have UEB for standard form of a linear equation. Then at the end of that equation, you go back into Nemeth mode because the next line you have 4x plus 5y equals C, space, close Nemeth mode, back into UEB, substitute values for A and B. Open Nemeth mode again, 4 parentheses 3, close parentheses plus 5 parentheses 1, close parentheses equals C. Close Nemeth mode, back into UEB, substitute values for X and Y. Open Nemeth mode at the end of that line, next line, 12 plus 5 equals C. And then continuing, 17 equals C. Close Nemeth mode, then you have that final statement. The standard form of the equation is 4x plus 5y equals 17. And for that equation, you go into Nemeth mode and then close Nemeth mode. And Meg said, wouldn't it be simpler to just stay in Nemeth mode and avoid changing back and forth before and after every comment? Actually gained by all the changes of mode. I'm not sure on that one. That's the way they're suggesting to do it.
Well, you're going to.
Well, you're going to have to, how else are you going to write standard form of a linear equation or substitute values for A and B and substitute values for X and Y? Because everything is uncontracted in numeric mode. There's
everything would have to be uncontracted. I guess you
well,
could do it without switching, but then every word and everything would have to be written out without contractions.
Well, we don't have.
Well, we don't have EBAE anymore. It's all going to UEB.
I mean, we're in a space where
we're going to have our foot in both worlds, but eventually everything will be transcribed with UEB surrounding it if we
all those contractions can
continue
be used
with
in Nemeth too. I'm not sure that is correct, Meg, with UEB now.
And when it's in, I believe when you are.
And when it's in, I believe when you are in Nemeth mode, when you go into Nemeth, there are no contractions, at least according to the provisional guidelines.
When vision, for example. Okay. In Nemeth mode, you should be in Nemeth Code and use the contractions allowed in Nemeth Code. Meg, I'm not sure about this. This would be a good question we need to write to Banna and ask Banna about. If I'm understanding it right, and I may not be, I don't know, but if I'm understanding right, now with Nemeth Code, except for that one word exception, if you are in Nemeth mode, You do not use any contractions. And that would hence be the reason for the switching.
Let's see what everybody has to say.
Remember, this is
And remember, this is to the best of our knowledge and our understanding. This is what we've brought back from training.
so we're happy. That's a UEB rule.
So we're happy
Because
to.
remember this.
That's a UEB rule, correct?
Now we're
Because remember,
transcribing within.
Now we're transcribing Nemeth within UEB context.
So the Nemeth itself doesn't change, but all the text surrounding the Nemeth is changing.
Yes.
And so that standard form of a linear equation,
Yes.
that's text surrounding the Nemeth. That's not text within Nemeth. If that makes sense.
Since we're expecting you doing this work now, who
Banna
would you
would
suggest
be
we
the one.
contact?
And I believe
Contact Banna.
Dr. DeAndrea said when you send in those comments on Banna, they go to her.
There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah, and that's going to be the hard balance. We should avoid switching in and out too much, but sometimes it's not going to be possible. It's going to have to be like that for this type of situation. I can understand, Meg. This is what we know to the best of our ability at this
And
moment.
again, this goes back to exactly what Kathy said earlier.
And again, this goes back to exactly what Kathy said earlier. Leave your comments with Banna.
Okay,
Okay,
so
we're going to move forward.
here's your first thing to Braille.
And we'll give you.
And we'll give you.
And just this example I took from McDougall-Littell Algebra 1 Practice Workbook with Examples, Teacher's Edition, Lesson 3.5, page 59.
Okay, we're almost there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be able to. I say if we have time.
Okay. I did that on purpose because I wanted it very clear that, yes, if there is just straight numbers and that kind of thing, you would not use anything but UEB. Now, if you had a fraction in this, then you would switch and go into Nemeth for the fraction. Yeah. And that's exactly why I did this, because quite frankly, when I was in the first training about the UEB with Nemeth, that shocked me completely. The fact that, you know, like all your word problems. So I think about like an elementary type math book. All the word problems could be a whole page, might just be totally all in UEB, unless there's a fraction.
So meaning
that, guess what? If you, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but I can't not say anything. Your students are going to need to know, if you decide to move to Nemeth, they're going to need to know both, because they're going to run into representations of both UEB and Nemeth within UEB context. Okay.
All right. And so, yes,
Answer
this was
that.
just straight UEB. So.
Ta-da!
And this actually, it's part B because this whole thing was together as one problem and that kind of thing, but I could not fit it into one slide. That was the other thing too. Okay, so this is the other half of that problem, and it's taken from the same source on the McDougall-Littell Algebra 1 practice workbook.
Okay, so we'll give you guys a little bit of time to start on that. All right, we're going to move on to the answers, and then we have one more
like
exercise
I said, I did the best
this.
I could. This example is completely doing my best with what I know. And I just realized something that I don't think with, so we've got the bold solution, and then you go into Nemeth for A, 65 times 2x plus 26, I'm sorry, 260 times x equals 780. Switch out of Nemeth, write algebraic model, go back into Nemeth, 130x plus 260x equals 780. Here, I think this is a mistake. I just realized I could have used the single word indicator with that simplify. And then you would have avoided that switch in and out for that particular one because it's just a single word. And so that period would have ended up being a Nemeth period, I believe. And then, see, we wouldn't have cross out the opening Nemeth 2 because we wouldn't need it. Then 390x equals 780. Close Nemeth code, combine like terms, open Nemeth code, x equals 2. Close Nemeth code, divide each side by 390. And then down below that, you find that open Nemeth code, x equals 2. Close Nemeth code, hours flying time, therefore she drove. Open Nemeth code 2x equals 4. Close Nemeth code hours. So, and hopefully, like I said, I did the best I could with the formatting, but
We have limited space on these slides too. It makes it very difficult. Would you even have to switch out of Nemeth mode for the first 2 lines, as neither has contractions?
maybe not. I didn't even think about that possibility, but that sounds plausible to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there again, you would be reducing the number of switches. Very good point, Linda.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Good catch. Remember, we're still learning. This is all very new to us too.
And then who was it that
So thank you
had,
for
was
being
it Andrea that had the question about,
I think it
yeah, Andrea, does this
I think
answer
it
your
was
question
Andrea.
about when there's explanation, step 1, step 2, and different parts of the problem is written out? Does this help you with that?
also.
Carol says I would just teach the students the UEB signs of operation and forget the switching for this
Okay.
one
We're
too.
going to discuss that more next time.
Yep.
We're
just presenting this time that you have 2 valid ways of doing it,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
how you do those 2 different valid ways to the best of our ability.
Okay.
Okay, so this was another exercise.
Let me see.
But,
Okay, so, and this is our last exercise. And this one actually, because I could not find an example that fit what I wanted. So this source is actually from, is example 14 from On Using the Nemeth Code with UEB, within UEB context by the National Braille Association that Dorothy Worthington presented at the VAVF Visual Aid Volunteers of Florida Conference in 2015. I took this example from her because I couldn't find another one like it that I liked. So notice in this one you have a Nemeth equation at the end of the directions, and then you go straight into Nemeth for the problems.
give you guys a few minutes before we go over the answers. Or just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the answers.
And this one, like I said, was done by someone who knows what they're doing, so the formatting should be correct, as long as I didn't end up with any spacing issues from the slides. So we've got the directions indented, switching to Nemeth Code right before the final equation in the directions, the 2x squared back to baseline minus 7x minus 4, punctuation indicator period, and then you go into your different questions. Number 1, x minus 4, 2, x plus 1, 3, 2x minus 1, 4, x minus 1, and then closing Nemeth indicator after a space on that same line. Then into the next set of directions, indented. And then opening, because it fit on that line, the line after the end of the directions preceding number 5, opening Nemeth there again. And then number 5, open parentheses, 3y raised to the third, back to baseline, plus 2y raised to the second, back to baseline, minus 32y, plus 2, close parentheses, divided by parentheses, y minus 3, close parentheses, and you got 6. With the open parentheses, 2b to the third power, back to baseline, plus b to the second power, back to baseline, minus 2b plus 3, close parentheses, divided by parentheses, b plus 1, close parentheses, and closing Nemeth mode. Shouldn't 5 and 6 numbers be in Nemeth?
Oh,
Yep. It was pretty late by the time I got to this one, and as I said, my hardest thing has been switching back and forth between doing math in Nemeth and math in UEB. my brain is just having all kinds of issues with going in and out of both of them.
Apparently I did
the worst proofreading job ever. Sorry about that.
But that is correct. Yes, they should
Thanks,
be in
Tina.
Nemeth. I like to stay in UEB only, but then I work in elementary school. Yeah, well, and the reality is, especially because most of our available textbooks and available resources right now are still in Nemeth.
Yeah.
The reality is we're going to be having our foot in both worlds for a while.
It's gonna take time to train.
It's going to take time to transition all of the instructional materials. We're working on it, and we're going to do whatever we need to do to get what students need and what's
And the
best
other
for
thing
them.
is,
And their
I know I have not had nearly as much training on the UEB math part and on the Nemeth with UEB math part as I've had on just straight UEB. And so not having as much training and practice with that, that's another reason why it's not as, and practice makes you better.
I think a lot of that has to
And I think a lot of that has to do too with just the latency and the decision of what they're doing with math and how they're addressing technical materials. And Anna kind of left it up in the air and said, hey, states, we're going to kind of let you choose how you're going to implement this, whether you're sticking with Nemeth or UEB. Remember, BANA adopted the whole code of UEB. They didn't just adopt part of it. I don't know who you ladies are, and all you're doing, this is confusing, and all are helping a lot. Oh, good. Whew. We're trying our best. Hopefully we're not making any worse. No. Kathy's done a phenomenal job of putting all of these presentations together and just being so knowledgeable about Braille, and we're so lucky to have her, and I'm so glad that we can share her with all of you and share
Thank
her
you.
knowledge.
I'm trying. I love the Braille. I love doing the Braille. All of the Braille. Nemeth, UEB, any of it. And I'm glad whenever we can help.
So, we have all the references.
So, we have all the references that were used to create these webinars, and she cited everything that she used. Here's our contact information. Please send in your homework to be complete. You can send it in paper Braille. You can send it via scan, as long as we can see the dots. You can send it via the Visual Braille app if you were using that, or you can send it in a Duxbury or Braille 2000 files. We have different types of documents. And please send in your opening and closing codes with your homework too, because I always kind of forget to tell you that. We love that Kathy loves doing this and learning all about UEB. Kay's been kind of listening in and out.
That was my biggest thing is taking a position. I had very good Braille skills. I did not want to lose them. So the more I can get entrenched in Braille, the more I'm happy.
So let me pull up the evaluations real quick before you go. And then I will give you the closing code once you've done the evaluations. So these are all, they should be open. They're all open, so please give us your feedback on this webinar. We greatly appreciate any input you can give us. And then I'm going to pull up the provisional guidelines real quick if you choose to stay on. But I'm just going to pull those up as you guys are signing out, or if you have any questions. Thank you, everyone. No contractions in Nemeth per UEB. Great. Good. I want to research proper formatting and doing right. Use of UEB. Fabulous. They do on BANA's website. You can get the formatting books, the Braille format books. I will share the provisional guide with my TVIs. Perfect. Okay. Let's see, I think I will close these out. Okay, I'm going to
Okay,
close
so
the
does
last
any-
one, and then we'll go back to sharing. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Or well, let me give you the closing code because it is 3:30. So thank you everyone for joining us, and please be sure to join us on February 12th for our very last webinar in this series, Just the Facts, Math with UEB and Nemeth. And that's when we will be discussing the burning question of what do I use? The closing code is symbols. SYMBOLS. It sounds funny when I say it out loud. Symbols.
Thank you guys.
Okay, I think that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, those that made
Carol,
comments and
welcome.
helped corrected us on anything.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
You guys are welcome. Afternoon.
You guys are
And we
welcome.
have
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Received
evening.
3 of homeworks from different
Afternoon.
people. One I've already got graded and returned to her. One I'm in the middle of grading, and one I haven't had a chance to touch it yet.
Okay, so I'm going to actually pull up the provisional guidelines there. Anybody else's? There's a few people on. Shared documents. It's not going to let me. I can browse. Bear with me.
I'm not sure.
Bear with me, folks, if you're sticking on there.
I don't remember an Octavia.
Sorry. There it is.
Quite a large file.
It's coming. It's quite a large file. It might take a second.
So this is what you want.
So this is what you want to be using when you're transcribing Nemeth within UEB context.
In one word, what I pulled,
see.
I tried to kind of pull things and group it together. So all the information is from this, but you'll see that how I grouped it and the order I put it in is different than how they did it. They had it grouped and stuff.
So here on the
So here on number 4 is where it says no contractions are used in Nemeth mode. It says to avoid use of switch indicators when a single word standing alone occurs between 2 math expressions, a one-word switch indicator, which you guys learned in 6.3, may be used in Nemeth mode to indicate the following words are in UEB. Contractions may be used in a subsequent word. A one-word switch indicator should precede the word whether or not it contains contractions. So whether or not it contains contractions. So I think it was somebody mentioned something about not switching. So you would have to go out.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to use
the one word, yeah.
Whether it has contractions.
No contractions.
No contractions are used in Nemeth mode.
So I think
and it says it right there in bold.
Our brains around is that
so
Nemeth,
I think the hardest thing to wrap our brains around is when you go into Nemeth, it's just referring to the symbols and the algebraic expressions and the numbers. It doesn't mean that you can start using EBAE once you're in Nemeth mode. And I don't know if that helps clear up anything for anybody, but that's basically what it boils down to. But please do read through the comments and help with the formatting.
And thank you for your comments. We are doing the best we can.
So yeah, no, thank you.